Welcome to the Conscious Style Podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth, and today I'm speaking with Shakaila Forbes-Bell, a fashion psychologist, the founder and editor-in-chief of Fashion is Psychology, and the best-selling author of Big Dress Energy, a book full of science-based tips on how to curate a mindful wardrobe. Shakaila, thank you so much for joining me for round two on the Conscious Style Podcast. You are in episode 24, if listeners want to also go back to that after this.
Well, what
And I'm just
episode
so
number is
excited.
this?
Oh, gosh. Oh, man, you're putting me on the spot. 78
Oh, wow. Well done.
round.
That is impressive.
So, yeah, that's exciting. So, on that episode, we talked a lot about kind of like the basics, I feel like, of fashion
Mhm.
psychology. In this episode, I wanted to talk specifically like about this book, which is also about general fashion psychology, but also about how to dress for your best self. Why did you want to write this book and share this concept with the world?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for having me back on. I love speaking with you. Such a great, I love everything to do with the conscious style. I guess, why did I decide to write the book? It wasn't really my decision, I actually, I was just happy like doing the blog stuff and figuring it out. You don't hear about fashion psychologists like getting jobs or anything like that. It wasn't a thing, right? So I didn't have a foggiest idea of what I was doing. I was just putting the blog content out there because I knew that this research was valuable. I knew that people could learn a lot from it. It could change not just the way that people consume, but the way brands speak to their consumers, the way people just look at their clothes differently, and just all of the different psychological, emotional, even physical benefits that you can get from clothes. So that was my main goal, to put it on the blog. And then a literary agent slid into my DMs and was like, "Oh, have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I was like, "I mean, no, but yeah, I could maybe put my English literature little courses to use." And I did the first draft of it, and Elizabeth, it was so trash. It read like the
I doubt it.
most. It was like an academic textbook. Like, it was so boring. It was just very much, it was almost like for businesses as well. And it took me a while. I had to do quite a few rewrites. I got a few rejections as well. People are like, this doesn't really have any direction. A lot of publishers were like, what is this? And then COVID hit, and I was furloughed, and I have had some time to really find my voice. And I was able to finally release myself from the shackles of like academic writing, where,
Mhm.
God forbid, you have an original thought that's not backed up by like three different sources. Like, I was able to really find the balance between making something that's fun, but also something that's really super grounded in science and grounded in facts as well. And I just thought, yeah, I want to make something that's in a voice that could be like your best friend, or like, your sister, like the everyday person can get it. Because like I said, there's so many papers, there's so much research that's existed for decades. It's just been held, like, kept out of reach and in the confines of stuffy, boring journals that people sometimes can't even access without paying. So that was the main goal for the book. And I feel like I managed to kind of get something that's pretty close to perfect of what I wanted to achieve.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say you definitely achieved that because it did not feel academic at
Yeah.
all. Like I flew through it. It was so easy to like I had to stop myself because I wanted the ideas to like sink into my brain.
Mhm.
But it was
Yeah.
so easy to read and just so fun. And yeah, you did break down these like scientific studies into just like relatable terms, which is so
Mm,
rare in any category, I feel like, including psychology. So that was really refreshing. I loved that.
thank you.
And you also have a podcast called Big Dress Energy. And in your podcast, you always ask guests, like, what does big dress energy mean to them? So I thought it would be
Mhm.
fun to start off with asking you, what does conscious style mean to you, since we're on the Conscious Style podcast?
Yes, I love this question. I feel like conscious style just means being aware. And being aware means being mindful. And of course, mindfulness involves being in the present and really absorbing all of the information that's around you, and really just taking the time to reflect on how you're feeling and what you're thinking and what mental processes might be happening that you're not consciously aware of. And I think when it comes to style, a lot of the times we're operating on autopilot.
Mhm.
Getting dressed can sometimes fall into the same categories as brushing your teeth and washing your face, something that you just have to do but you don't really give much thought. So I think conscious style is giving it that energy, giving your appearance, the time and the space that you need to really benefit from all of the amazing powers that you can get from it, and just making sure that what you believe and what you want to feel like, and maybe even what you want to stop feeling like, or certain identities that you want to promote or identities that you want to conceal, just having all of that awareness and putting that into how you choose to style yourself. I think that's having a conscious style.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Such a different take. And I absolutely love that. Just like this awareness of how we're dressing. And you touched on identities. And that was something that really blew my mind in the book. This concept that, like, we basically dress in three different ways. We dress for the
Mhm.
person we hope to be, the person we fear to be, or the person we are most of the time.
Mhm.
So, how can we tell which of these identities we're dressing for?
Yeah, I think if you think about it kind of like on a scale, right? So like most of the times we're all operating at kind of this neutral level. Like you're just trying to like get through your day. Maybe nothing exciting's happening. You're just kind of going with the motions. I feel like that's who we are most of the time. Who we hope to be is us at like our best selves. It could be us when we have something like really important coming up, or we've decided that we've had like a mindset shift, or we felt like we've leveled up in a certain area of our lives. Maybe we've started a new hobby, maybe we've just gained a sense of enlightenment. I feel like that when we feel that sense of like something shifted and we're getting closer to this aspirational goal that everybody I think has, that's the person we hope to be. And when we're just feeling like not ourselves, we're feeling like we're conforming, or we're just going through the motions, or we wear those things and we're just like, oh, that will work. Like we've all had those kind of moments where we're just not feeling it, or we wear clothes that we know just don't make us really look our best, or clothes that maybe remind us of bad negative times, or ones that kind of put us into a certain box. Those are styles that represent the person that we fear to be. So again, it's the same thing with being like conscious, being mindful. It's all about understanding like what's going on in here and in here, and how is that translating into what you're projecting and the decisions that you're making about what you're putting on your body every day.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that conforming piece is something really relatable. I feel like I'm finally stepping into my own personal style. Like this kind of segment of the podcast, we're focusing a lot on personal style. I just feel like it starts inward,
Yeah.
and I just love that you're bringing this deeper aspect to it. I love
Yeah.
that
I
so
think
much.
it's so true when you talk about like being in your teens, like you're finding yourselves. And there's studies that say that, because teens and adolescents are really trying to figure out who they are and where they fit in the world, they utilize their clothes and their appearance as a way to essentially like try on different hats and try on different these identities to help figure out which ones fit. So I know that a lot of people, well, it is kind of common knowledge that Gen Z will stick to like fast fashion because it's an easy way to try all these different things and not spend a bunch of money. But again, I think it's because, yeah, they're really just trying to figure things out. They don't have the resources and able to do that. So, of course, they're going to be attracted to things that are just cheaper and easier. And it's a way for them to kind of explore their identity through their clothes. And I think it can be beneficial in one sense. Like, I don't believe in having a signature style, because one day I might be influenced by something completely different. And I like that my wardrobe is expansive enough and is varied enough and diverse enough that I can tap into these different parts of myself. So I think that's a great part of it. But then also then you get into the trap of maybe like really trying to like overspending and over consumption. So it's always a fine line that I think that we're balancing just generally as humans, because we do have that in like that that battle inside us to want to fit in, because we're humans, we're social creatures. We do find a bit of comfort in conformity and like having our tribe with us and like feeling like we belong. But at the same time, we have that desire to stand out. We want to be different. We want to be individual. We want to showcase something about us that makes us unique. So it's just maybe being more conscious about how we're utilizing our clothes to do that, and doing it in a way that's very ethical and just makes even financial sense to us as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I can definitely like resonate with that exploration of like trying on different identities. I love swapping for that. Like this was actually both of these pieces were swapped. I don't know if I like them together. If you're watching the video, I'm not sure in this outfit combo, but
But you tried it. That's the
but it's an
point. You
experiment.
explored it and it's something different. And I think that's what's fun. I feel like people sometimes they're so shy, or they shy away from that, but you've discovered something new about yourself because you've investigated that. And there is a study that said that people wearing layers are perceived to be more competent than people not wearing layers. So you have that going for you as well.
Interesting. I do feel more confident in layers, although it's not always possible. I mean, in the summer when it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit, I don't know, Celsius, um, then it's like not so easy. But yeah, that was just like another interesting tidbit from your book, like this about layers or how people interpret different colors. And I like
Yeah.
specifically wore a color today for this interview, color psychology.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit more about like the identities because I think a lot of us might get into that phase where we're like, okay, I feel like I'm dressing for the person I fear to be, but I want to be dressing for the person that I
Yeah.
am or want to be. So, how can we make that shift? How can we start dressing for our best self?
I think the first point is to really figure out how you're feeling and like what is maybe stopping you from dressing your best self. Like, because as much as I can say, go out and wear bright colors and show off your curves and do all of that, something I really wanted to make clear that I acknowledge in the book is that there are many constraints that stop people from maybe dressing like their idealized version of themselves. For me, for example, I love like high heels, like a sickening boot, but I have a chronic pain condition that stops me from really wearing things that are going to be super difficult on my joints or maybe cause me some pain. So that's a limitation there. And I have to figure out how to work a way around that. Other people might be in cultures that may not celebrate such like outlandish styles of dressing, and there could be restrictions on there, particularly for women. So that's a constraint there. Other people might have financial constraints that makes maybe feel like they cannot explore anything else than what they already have. So I want to be really mindful that, you have to always work within the constraints that you have. And in the book as well, I talk about different ways that you can do that, like swapping, like shopping at charity. So I got this top on eBay for £2 on eBay. Like,
Wow.
if I didn't get, somebody would have just probably thrown it away. Like
Yeah.
£2. Like, I feel like there's so many different ways you can circumvent that. When I want to dress up in my high heels, but my knees are saying, "Girl, no," then I have like there's so many different types of comfortable shoes that I can try and wear. Crocs are in right now. Like, there's different ways we can go, maybe change the way we think about these things as well. But I really think one thing that I do personally is I look at people that I think are close to that idealized version of myself. So I look at inspiration. I think with social media, we're able to curate these feeds of people that we just admire, whether it be for their work or for their style or for their beliefs. Like, we are able to be in contact with so many people from around the globe and just be inspired by them. And I like to do that. Like I was telling you before, like I watched White Lotus, and this is going to be so controversial, but the character Lucia, she's like a lady of the night kind of, but I just liked her. She was just spunky and she was just go-getting, and I was inspired by that style, and I wanted to explore that. And I feel like that's closer to this idealized version of myself that I have, that is someone that's not shy, someone that doesn't hold back. And I was able to find a bit of that by emulating someone that I really admire. And that feeds into the concept of enclosed cognition, which I think I spoke about probably in the podcast earlier, which is essentially saying that the meanings that you ascribe to clothes, when you wear them, you're going to embody them. If you see someone that you really admire, someone whose style or whatever you admire, and they're wearing certain style that aesthetically looks pleasing to you, you've already put all of that good like assumptions and judgments on it based on their association, the styles association with that person. So when you wear it, you're going to embody all of that. It's going to help you step out of maybe this rut that you are in and get closer to the idealized versions of yourself, because clothes do have the power not just to change the way you think, but also change the way you act. And it's all about doing these little changes that can really help shift your mindset and just, help you level up. And I think that's what I really wanted to get across in this book. And I think that's one of the easiest ways you can get from the person you are most of the time to the person that you hope to be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think reading your book fully got me in that camp, like fully convinced me that what we wear really, really matters in terms of like how we think about ourselves and how we move around in the world. Like, I think we all know what we wear informs what people think of us. That's kind of
Mm-hmm,
obvious. In general, this segment of the podcast, it's been so cool to hear people talk about how what we wear also informs how we feel and how confident we are, or how we're ready to show up in the world. And that is
mm-hmm.
just so
Yeah.
incredible to me, because it's something that, although obviously there are constraints,
Mm-hmm.
it's something that we can like kind of control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I completely agree. And it even reminded me of another study by like my mentor, Aurora Bardi. She's based in France now. But she produced a paper with some of her colleagues that was looking into sustainable fashion. Like I've been very open. I'm still learning so much about my sustainable like fashion journey. But she produced a paper that basically said when we wear things that are sustainable, that are ethical, our subjective happiness increases. And I think that's because there we have that link between our beliefs and what we're actually wearing and what we're actually doing as well. Like for me, that's something that I'm really like becoming increasingly passionate about. So like when I wear this top, this secondhand top, there's not that dissonance there that I would normally experience if I'm wearing something that doesn't align. And I think people should be more conscious about that, because the link between our clothes and the way we feel, it's not just about, the certain meanings that we associate them. It's also about, what they stand for and what they represent as well. So that's something that we should all be aware of as well.
I love that you touched on that. Because yeah, there is often this disconnect between how we actually want to dress, or maybe like the brands we would ideally support, or the ways we would ideally access clothing, like
Mm-hmm.
secondhand,
Yes.
and then what we actually end up buying. There's a lot. And you talked about kind of some of the drivers, what gets us to shop
Yeah.
in your other episode. So there's a lot of factors at play that are not in our control. But you wrote a great article called Why We Buy Clothes We Like and End Up with a Wardrobe We Hate. And you had some tips for like how to avoid this incongruence. So can you share some of your tips for that?
Yeah, I think my most famous tip, like right now, is really the 4-3-2-1 rule.
Yes, I've been seeing that around.
Yeah. So I think it's just so handy and it's so easy, and it's partly based on some research as well. So 4 years, I say, think of your future self. I think when we're looking forward, it's mostly like quite positive, and we always think about the next stage in our life and where we're going to get to. So that helps you put yourself in the mind frame of that most idealized version of yourself. Would they be wearing this outfit because if you know that they would, is that something that you're going to aspire to, then you're going to get all of the good feels when you're wearing. You know it's going to take you to that next stage, so you're going to hang on it for a little longer, and you know it will have that longevity, right? If we have pieces that we truly love, that we know are going to stand the test of time, there's less chance of us like wanting to like compulsively buy things and just get rid of them. And then three, I always say three different occasions or three different styles. Like I'm notorious. If you go on my Instagram page, you'll see, that dress again. Or like I'm just known for like re-wearing the hell out of my clothes, because I think it really thinks about, the cost per wear analysis. If you want to find out the value of your clothes, think about how much they cost, but how much times you're going to wear it. And then you'll get to see like, okay, this dress might have been like £100, but I worn it like 100 times. So essentially it's like almost paying for itself. Like, and I think that's another thing that is a big issue with fashion, this whole kind of like Instagram like pictures, this kind of one and done idea of like the outfits. Even like you saying that, okay, I'm going to buy this, take the picture, but then even give it to the charity shop and then they're overwhelmed, or you're just donating it. Like, I think if we're not really making use out of our clothes, then just we're not being ethical. No matter if you got it from, if you did a big haul in like a charity shop, or if you did like a massive swap and you got tons of stuff, like if you're not finding value of your clothes, then you're not going to get the benefit. You're not exhibiting big dress energy. And then two, I say take 2 deep breaths, because shopping is chemical warfare. We have so much chemicals like firing when we enter a store or when we go on the web page. You have the adrenaline rush from the hunt of like getting something new, especially the fact that we're loss averse. Humans think that losses loom larger than gains. We don't want to miss out. You have the signs, you have the banners that say, oh, last chance to buy. There's 6 people looking at this item. You have all of these things that are making us really anxious and making us feel like we need to get something. We also have, the boost of dopamine when we feel like we're going to get something shiny and new. That's happening. But too much dopamine can cripple an area of your brain called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And that area of the brain helps you weigh up pros and cons. So by the time you're trying to, make the decision of, do I actually really like this outfit? All of the dopamine and thinking like, oh, I'm going to get something new, I'm going to look cute, blah, blah, blah. Like all of the external stimuli that's just really bombarding you is going to encourage you to make a bad decision. So when you take a deep breath, you're calming down your nervous system. You're allowing yourself a chance to really process and make sure that all of those chemicals are not really taking root and scrambling your brain in a sense. And then I say one night's sleep, which is kind of an extension of that. Give yourself some time away from it. Oftentimes I find that if I've gone to sleep and then I wake up and I'm still thinking about the outfit, then I know, okay, I really like it. But then if I've woken up and I've forgotten about it, which happens a lot, then I've saved myself some money and I saved myself wasted time on an outfit that wouldn't have been me. But a lot of people say, oh, you would have missed out on it. I just got a dress on eBay that I have been waiting months to get. I kept missing it. It kept getting sold out. Someone sold it in my size and I got it. And it just feels even more meant to be. And the fact that I had all of that time to really contemplate it and think about all the places I would wear it, how I would style it, all the value I'm going to get out of it. I know that this is a piece that's going to be with me for a long time. It's going to be really special. So I think if we just take the time to go through that rule and give yourself the space to really ask yourself the tough questions to make sure that you are spending money wisely. Because I think the money aspect is something as well people are not talking about. We're in a cost of living crisis, especially over here in the UK. We can't afford to be spending money like even the whole ethical, sustainable, environmental part of it. If you even take that out, just think about the money. We can't afford to be spending money on things like on clothes and things that don't bring us value. We need to be a lot more smart and just conscious about where we are putting that value. And clothes do bring value, so just make sure that you're giving yourself the space to pick wisely.
Yeah, I love all those tips. And I feel like when we are so much more intentional about what we're buying, it does hold more value in our closets and we're more likely to continue to wear it, of course, and be mindful about, where it goes, perhaps when we're done with it, when we can't wear it anymore for whatever
Yeah.
reason. Because, sometimes things do change in our lives. But
Mhm.
yeah, I love that. And I love the story about the dress that like came back to you because it's just like it's so meant to be.
It was so bad. It was. I was like, oh, when you're like, go to bed and it's haunting you, the dress that you didn't get. I'm like, okay, if it's meant to be, it'll be. And I'm telling you, there's so much clothes out there, and there's like, we don't have a shortage of clothes on this
Right.
earth. Like, there's a likelihood you'll find it or you'll find something similar.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And something you talked about earlier that I wanted to touch on a little bit more was this balance between individuality and kind of conforming to a group or a specific situation. Maybe you're in a work environment with a dress code, for instance, or maybe you live in the countryside and you feel like, you can't maybe dress like what you would wear in New York City. So how do
Mhm.
we find that balance? What are your
Yeah.
suggestions?
Yeah, I actually think that we have been moving towards that as a society for a while. Like we've been seeing like the casualization of dress codes, like people really understanding that being able to not just be comfortable, but to put your own spin and your own identity within the confines of work is something that benefits you. But I talk in the book, I think I talked on a chapter about different styles like formal clothes or casual clothes. And I mentioned the Goldilocks principle. And I think that's something that actually can apply to like balancing this need to fit in and stand out and like managing different environments that you're in. So basically, I'm sure as you can understand, the Goldilocks principle is understanding that comfort and happiness lies not in the extremes, but when there's kind of a happy balance. So, not too hard, not too soft, but, like not too formal or not too casual, but when it's like just right and there's just a mix. And I feel like when the mix is where we add our unique flair, but then understanding, how we can still be aligned and be in one with the people in our environment and that we're appropriate for the environment that we're in. Because as much as we might be wearing something that's super unique and it makes us feel good, it's true that because we're social creatures and we do feel like need to belong, if we're like, I don't know, I was watching a Real Housewives episode, and one of the housewives went to a funeral. Everyone's wearing black. She turned up wearing green. Like, you're just going to feel, she might have felt like she had big dress energy, but it wasn't appropriate for the setting. And she felt like she stood out and she felt uncomfortable. And we can experience situations like that no matter the environment that we go in. But I don't even think it's that big of an issue because, study shows that unconsciously, the more time we spend with people, the more increased chance there are of our styles kind of blending. That has happened to me. Someone that I think I'm a bit of a like kooky, like out there dresser, but every time I go into a new office or start working with people, I've noticed we're getting each other's styles of it. They're dressing a bit more like me. I'm dressing a bit more like them. And so that happens naturally. So I don't even think that that's something that we should work super hard on because I think as humans, we're just hardwired to always be balancing these kind of two different competing ideas.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even this interview, I was like, "Oh, I'm talking to Shakaila. I have to wear a bright color."
Exactly. You're wearing a long wavelength color. I'm wearing a long wavelength color. Like, do you see? Like, it just happens naturally. I find that. I've even found that with like my close friends, like my agent, she has these bigger glasses, and like I'm now looking at those kind of big glasses now, which I wouldn't have before. Like, we just do that naturally because we like what we like and we like to mirror that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And another aspect of your book, you talked about doing a wardrobe analysis or ethnography, and I thought we could also talk a bit about that. So, what is
Yes.
a wardrobe ethnography?
So, wardrobe ethnography is essentially finding yourself or finding out more about yourself through the process of looking through your wardrobe. Because when you think about it, your wardrobe is essentially it's almost like telling the story of you. There is just like hundreds of decisions that you've made like throughout your life and all of the inspirations that cause you to make those little decisions. But oftentimes, like because like I said, we're just rushing or we're dressing on autopilot or our wardrobes are chaotic, we're not taking the time to really reflect on those decisions and if they've been correct or what they mean to us and whether they fit into the person that we are most of the time or the person that we hope to be. So wardrobe ethnography is essentially about going through wardrobe, doing a little fashion show, but with some introspection added to it. So asking yourself about 6 questions. So one is, what percentage of your wardrobe do you currently wear? And like, how many pieces do you own? So I think a lot of the times people don't realize that they are only wearing about what, like 5 to 20% of their wardrobe. There's many things there that go unworn. But why has it gone unworn? I've spoken to some women who they said, like, after they had their baby and became mothers, they felt like they lost parts of themselves and their identity. So although like they could definitely wear like a lot of the pieces that were going unworn, they just felt like it wasn't part of them anymore. And some of them wanted to get back to that part of them. So it's like almost like having that kind of self-revelation by understanding what you're wearing and what you own and what you're wearing versus what you're not wearing. And then it's about asking yourself, like, what categories do these outfits fall into and what are you actually wearing most of the time? So there was a time when I had a lot of going out clothes, like a lot of like mini skirts and little sequin dresses. But I realized I was staying at home a lot of the time and going on the school run. And that just wasn't it. Like, that was Shakaila 18, like at 18. This is not Shakaila at like 29. So I had to do that adjustment there. And I feel like I was holding on to that part of myself because so much has changed in my life and there's so all of these responsibilities. And it made me like, yeah, it made me reconcile with that and understand that although these clothes don't fit that part of me anymore, and it's maybe something I need to pass on, maybe there's other ways I can fit that kind of fun and freedom and that old version of me into my life through maybe activities and less about the wardrobe, or maybe inputting like quirky bits into styles that I'm wearing now. Maybe not a boring grey tracksuit, maybe like a bright colourful one from like Pangea or something like that. And then looking at the ratio of old clothes to new. So in the book, I go into like detail about what it might mean by having loads of old clothes. It maybe mean that, you did a great job in the 4-3-2-1 brawl and you all these clothes you like they fit into like the most idealized version of yourself, or it could mean that you're benefiting from nostalgia, or it also could mean that maybe you're holding on to things that you should be really letting go of and you're not progressing, and you're kind of stuck in these clothes that again don't represent a part of you that you are now or that you hope to be. And then if you have too many new clothes, again, it could suggest that maybe you started from scratch and you're trying to find yourself again through your clothes. But how many new clothes do you have? Is it something that you need to address? Are you just buying because of the dopamine rush or the retail therapy? Like, are you buying haphazardly? And then looking at the ratio of clothes to fit, that ones that don't. I think a lot of times people hold on to clothes that don't fit in the hopes that it will one day and to motivate them. But for me, that's like every time you open your wardrobe, you're just being confronted with like failure, being confronted with the challenge. And I don't feel like your clothes should be some sort of challenge or something to overcome, right? They should be things that help you get to this next stage, or just help you throughout your day, or make you feel good, or just maybe feel like a bit of a comfort blanket. And just, I feel like there's so many ways that your clothes can motivate you or empower you. And I feel like thinking that there's something like you need to tackle or overcome, and this like it can reinforce issues with your body. So I always ask people to think about how much clothes that they're holding on to that is a size that their body doesn't want to be anymore. And then again, looking at colors, how do you feel about this color? So in the chapter about color psychology, I make it clear that as much as there is some research that talks about bright colors being associated with positive things, everybody has their own perceptions of color, whether it be from like cultural experiences, language, or like individual experiences as well. I can tell everyone, oh, wear yellow, it's for joy, but then you can have a terrible experience of someone wearing yellow and they were horrible to you, or you embarrassed yourself wearing a yellow dress one time. That's not going to be a color that you want to keep in your wardrobe. Or if your wardrobe just looks like it belongs to a funeral procession, or if it's just like completely monotone, like what is that? Ask yourself, is that working for me? Because it could be, but then maybe it's not. Maybe you're missing out by not, exploring. And then looking at like your top outfits, like how would you describe them? What do they look like? How do they make you feel? And how can you kind of get more of that? So again, it's not saying like just like this and just like that. I make it very clear that I'm not a stylist. I'm not telling people how to dress. I'm giving people the tools to figure out what their clothes are doing for them and how they want to feel in their clothes, and is it something that they already have, they just been overlooking it, or is it something that they need to address and that they can change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, there's so much there. I feel like I have to like rewind and listen to that again and again. And it's also, yeah, in the book as well. But yeah, there's just so much that we can do to like dissect our wardrobes
Mhm.
to just help them be a source of joy rather than like a source, like as you said, like a challenge or
Mhm.
like of stress. And
Yeah.
yeah, we do go through different life stages. I also had all these club clothes and I'm like, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna wear these anymore. Like I have to let go of that part of my life. Not to say I'm never gonna go to a club again, but when I do,
Exactly.
dress differently than that.
Yeah.
And also, I had this workwear phase because I had this like standard like office job. That was like on the total side of conforming to the environment because there was a fairly strict dress code and like totally not individualized in my style. I think there were
Mhm.
probably ways I could have embedded it more if I knew more about these concepts. Yeah, you have to really think about if your wardrobe reflects you. But yeah, I feel like a key part of that is also like figuring out why it doesn't reflect you
Mhm.
and digging deeper because we hear so much about these closet clean outs and all this stuff. But if you do a closet clean out and then you might still end up with a wardrobe that you don't really love. And
Exactly.
and B, you might just keep buying things that aren't
Mhm.
actually, suiting you. And so that deeper
Exactly.
reflection is so necessary, I think.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, a lot of people be like, oh, I haven't worn this in a few months or a year. I'm just going to get rid of it. But maybe there's something else that's blocking you from not wearing it. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just because it was so out of reach, like you didn't even know you had it anymore. Maybe it's because like you felt a bit shy, but you're feeling more confident now. Like there's so many other ways that you could be thinking about your wardrobe when you're doing the clean out versus, oh, I haven't worn this in a while. Let me get rid of it.
Yeah, I love that point. I mean, we had, the past 3 years have been quite different. So, yeah,
Yeah.
for instance, getting rid of something based on that might not make sense. And right, like I feel like reading your chapter on color psychology inspired me to be like, no, I'm not going to get rid of my bright colored things, even though I don't wear them a lot because
Yeah.
I think I'm not wearing them enough because it's like internal work of like being comfortable with showing up. And like I just read the book, The Body is Not an Apology.
Yeah.
Yeah, like further emphasize that. Like, don't be afraid of like, showing up,
Mhm. Yeah.
of who you are and
Mhm.
who you want to be.
Yeah.
Um,
I love the chapter about are you a body terrorist? And I was
yeah.
it made me think about how I talk about my body a lot. And it's like if you were talking to someone else like that they would call the police on you. Like that would be so bad. Like it really makes you think like, yeah, the way you're even looking at your body and the way you're adorning it and the way you're styling it, there's so many layers to it. We really need to think about, yeah, not even just how we're approaching our style, but yeah, the way we're talking about it.
Totally, totally. So another thing you talked about was that part of that wardrobe ethnography was evaluating how much of our wardrobe is new stuff and how much is older stuff. So can you speak a little bit about like the endowment effect and
Mhm.
that balance of like old and new?
Yeah, so the endowment effect essentially says that we place more value on things that we feel a sense of ownership over. And I feel like a lot of the times we don't feel that we have that sense of ownership with our clothes. And I think that's because when we buy them, maybe we're just seeing them as they're being like styled on the site or how we've seen it paired on social media. And we're just seeing it in a very one dimensional way, but we're not putting our own spin on it. We're not really putting our own kind of take, even the way we style it or the way we customize it. So in the book, when I talked about the endowment theory, I was talking about making sure that your clothes are being altered or customized or shaped in order for them to really fit you. Because when you do that, when you put more effort into creating something, you think of it as more valuable. So I, like a couple of years ago, I found a tailor, Joe, down the road, and he's like my local dry cleaner. And I started realizing that I have loads of cool trousers that I never wore, but it was because they didn't fit me right. They just didn't fit, especially you go on social media, you see these girls with the our most hourglass figures ever, and the jeans are just fitting them super perfectly. I always used to be like, why the hell are these not fitting me right? And I realized I needed to make the clothes that I love work more for me. So I took a bunch of my jeans to the tailor, and I got them all, like some of them hemmed. I got a lot of them like taken in at the waist, and they just looked so, like, they looked amazing. But more than that, it's because I spent that extra effort into maintaining them. So even if you look at the cost per wear analysis, in that analysis, there's a, much as you buy it, but there's a part of the equation that factors in the money that you spent in maintaining it, or altering it. So I feel like we should all be thinking about doing that when we buy something, especially if it's secondhand or if it's vintage as well. If you swapped it, like, try to do something to make it more yours, because then you'll have place more of a value in it. And then again, you'll be less likely to want to just buy new clothes, because they do have the value of like the dopamine boost and the shiny novelty aspect of it, but then you're really helping to combat that with the value that you've added to the stuff that you already have.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for all these tips thus far, Shakayla. Do you have any other suggestions for people who are trying to dress for their best selves? Like, is there any other advice you would give?
I think that people need to understand that the idea of your best self is constantly changing. As humans, we're always shifting and we're evolving. Our eyes are being open to new things, new people, and new experiences. So as much as now your best self might be you, like looking super corporate and having maybe like a ton of designer, but then you might be introduced to a whole new world, or a bit of some like other people, or a new landscape, and maybe those things might not appeal to you anymore, and it's okay to shift that dynamic. I think the great thing about clothes is it allows us to be almost kind of like chameleons. We can explore different elements of our identity through our wardrobe. Like I said in the introduction, like my family is from the Caribbean. Like when I go to carnival in Trinidad and I'm wearing my big feathers and my gems, like that, I just feel like such a Caribbean girl. But then when I'm in London, then I'm wearing my like jeans and my little trainers and my tote bag, and I'm walking around like with my hats, and I just feel more like a London girl. And I love both parts of my identity. Like I should be able to explore every breadth of that, and my clothes allow me to navigate that. And I feel like everybody should have a deeper understanding of that, and just essentially have fun with your clothes. Your clothes are above anything, they're fun, and you should be able to experiment. So many parts of our lives are so restricted, and we have to act and work and do things in a certain way in order to thrive and succeed. But you have power over the way you adorn yourself, obviously within constraints, but you can do little things to just give you that boost and to get the positive benefits of clothes, and to give yourself big just energy. And my book gives you a step-by-step guide on how to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And where can people find your book and how can people follow you as well?
Yes. So if you're in the States or outside of the Commonwealth, you can get my book at Book Depository. I think you can also get it on Blackwell's. They do shop internationally, of course, Amazon, but there's also loads of independent, like bookshop.org, Roundtable Books, and just anywhere that sells good books. And you can also check my website, fashionisPsychology.com. We have a ton of cool writers that are always publishing new research in fashion psychology. If you want a bit more of the like the meaty, juicy academic stuff. But then as well, you can follow us on Instagram. Me, I'm at Shakaila Elise on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. But Twitter, I mostly just talk about Love Island and nonsense like that. But on my TikTok, I do talk about fashion psychology. And then also Fashion is Psychology on Instagram as well. Like we have the best kind of meme psychology content. I love what we're doing right now. So follow us there.
Yeah, it's really fun. Thank you again, Shakaila, so much for being on the podcast for round two. I am going to ask you the same question I asked you at the end of your other interview, and that is, what would a better future for fashion look like to you?
I think a better future of fashion is one where everyone truly understands the value of clothes, not just on an aesthetic level, but on a psychological and an emotional and just a general well being level.